All right, so I'm sitting here with Miss Sarah Dill, who is a counselor at Clinton High School. You've been a counselor both here at the high school and at the junior high, so you've kind of seen a lot of the progression of what Clinton has been, even former Clinton student. So you're kind of here. Just even before we get into this, talking about conflict resolution, how have you seen kind of conflicts with teenagers shift over the years? How are they kind of the same? Like all the parents can kind of assume it's the same thing that they experienced when they were kids, but then also how have they kind of progressed into this 2026 world?
Yeah, I think that social media has had a big impact on how students view themselves and view others. I think used to, back when I was in high school, the kinds of issues that I dealt with are things that now students are dealing with in middle school, things that you and I would have dealt with in middle school are now in upper elementary. So I do think everything has kind of shifted down.
So do you pretty much see, I guess, the assumption is that a lot of the origin of these conflicts arise from social media. I know that that's a big part of it, but where do you see kind of the origin of most of the conflicts that you see or get to experience or talk to students here at the high school?
Yeah, we do get quite a bit from social media that then students are upset about and they bring to school. That does happen quite frequently. Other times, a lot of this is developmental, right? Like they think everybody's looking at them. Or if a group of people are talking and laughing, like they think they're laughing about them. And I think that's just a developmental thing from a teenager's point of view. They're just very egocentric, thinking of themselves in general. But I would say that between social media and those kinds of misunderstandings, and I think that is the key to most conflict resolution, is the communication piece. Like, you see students talking and you think it's about you, and so you start to internalize and go down your own rabbit hole without saying, like, hey, is something going on? Like, y'all are laughing, like, did I miss something? And then they could, like, clue you into the joke, or they could be like, hey, you've got a big old whatever coming out of your nose, like something like that.
The school district has really put in a lot of effort into these kids. Really from the kindergarten, not just academically and athletically and artistically, but also kind of introspectively. Where have you seen kind of the investments that the school district has done to help kids understand how to resolve conflict in an appropriate manner?
I think that our students do work really hard to focus primarily on what they are here for, which is academic instruction. Most of the outside of school piece involving school activities like extracurriculars, sports, whatever, I think that those are handled internally with their coaches, and I think they all do or their instructors or their directors or whatever. I think they all do a really good job of keeping the peace in their groups. I think it's whenever students don't have guidance in a wide field, during lunch in the cafeteria or during dismissal when they're all here at the high school in the auditorium and they have less structure. I think it's the lack of structure whenever students don't know where to go to say, like, hey, I'm having a problem with this. Or if they're at home and social media is, they're looking through something and they see it and they just don't have the guidance, or they don't have somebody to go to, like a teacher or coach or counselor or principal or parent. Well, I guess they could go to a parent, but I think that's where there's a big gap.
So with the kids, if you had to talk to them, which you get to talk to a lot of kids, all throughout the day about various things. When my time working here at the high school, you and I have sat in several times with several students working through issues. So I've gotten to see you at work firsthand. But if you had a kid that was kind of sitting here with you and they had something they were dealing with and they didn't have that structure, what kind of guidance or what kind of strategies would you give them to kind of help, go through these conflicts and resolve them in an appropriate manner?
Yeah, I think this is applicable to adults as well. Even as an adult dealing with a child or as between adults, I really think the biggest thing is to take a break before you say something. I think a lot of times people act from a place where they are heightened emotionally. Either they're super upset about something, or they're really angry, or their feelings are really hurt. And I think when you're at a level 10, if you try to talk to somebody, like, you're going to say a lot of things you regret, or you're going to attack or like be upset. So I think that the first thing would be to like take a break, take a few deep breaths, like get yourself to a place where you can talk more rationally and not from an emotional standpoint. Because once you're done with feeling hurt or upset or bothered, I think you can say like, hey, in a calm and rational manner, this hurt my feelings when this happened. This is how I felt. Like, you can use a lot of I statements, like, instead of trying to blame someone else. So I think a lot of that is like taking responsibility for your own actions and like your feelings, because you can't assume somebody else's intent. Like, and I think, so this is all getting down to trying to calmly communicate about a situation, because most of the time I think somebody else, like the other party in this, would admit like, hey, yeah, that was not, I said that maybe, but like that was not what I meant, or that is not how I meant for that to come across. Right. So I think if you can get people's emotions down to a level where they can talk rationally, I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, we talk a lot at our house about an overabundance of assumption and a lack of communication that happens with the adults and it happens with the kids.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing, like, it happens with relationships of all kinds, like parent-child, spouses, friends, it's workplace even. Like, there are a lot of opportunities to be misunderstood just because you make the assumptions. Right. And you can't play this probably, but like my mom would always say, like, you know what she'd say, because I bet your mom said the same thing. Yeah. Like, we don't want to make assumptions. We don't want to assume anything.
Correct. Yeah. So if a parent, they're noticing, okay, I want to be more actively involved in helping my student grow emotionally and in a maturation kind of manner, what are some strategies and some advice, I guess, for parents, guardians, mentors of how to help a young teenager, and then also, a teenager who's near 17, 18 years old, almost near their 20s, help them kind of work towards conflict resolution?
Yeah. I think it's just going to all come down to communicating and getting yourself, trying to learn, like, what can I do to calm myself down? Like, recognizing when you're at a heightened level and giving yourself, like, the grace and the freedom to calm yourself down. And, like, a lot of that, like, I'm old and I'm still learning these things, right? So I do think that is an evolution. And there are definitely times when I realize, like, hey, I reacted when I should have taken a few days to calm myself down, or a couple of hours or whatever. So I think if you can model that behavior, I think that's very helpful. And then say, like, hey, you probably heard us arguing, like me and your dad arguing last night, but like now it's been a few days and now we can talk about it. And I understand that I hurt her feelings. I understand that she was mad and she hurt my feelings. And now, like, afterwards, you can process it all. Yeah. But I think it's just really important to give yourself a little bit of time. And that's a problem. I mean, involves communication, too, because, like, some people want to go at it while everything is still heightened. And
yeah. So I think that kind of goes, like we were talking about with maturity. Kind of the last thing, I guess, to talk about is, most people, if they're looking at it from an outside in, or, even with, you were talking about structure, a lot of times we think if you do X, Y, and Z, here's the consequence. And many, many times we have talked at our house, and I know friends have as well, about consequences aren't just negative things. There are positive consequences. Yeah. We might have different words for them of a negative consequence and then, a dividend that pays off. But at the end, they're all consequences. Talk to me about the consequences, both good and bad, about resolving conflicts in a positive way on school property, and then also those consequences that aren't so positive when they're not handled in a correct manner.
Yeah, I think positive consequences would be having the skills in a future situation to communicate without the escalation, to realize your triggers or your issues, like recognizing like my face gets hot. Like I can feel myself getting worked up.
And like the second time is always easier than the first time, easier than the third time. So the further along you go, the better you have control over that.
Yeah, the cumulative effect of like recognizing things. And then as you get older, and this is something that little kids, I think, have a real problem with because they don't always have the ability to remove themselves from a situation. Like, I am an adult and I can get in my car and I can leave if I'm having a problem until I calm down enough to come back and rationally talk something out. Well, kids don't always have that option. But it is helpful. Like, and we talk a lot to students, like, do you need to come to the office? Like when you feel yourself, and some of them have gotten to where they can feel themselves getting upset and they can say like, hey, I'm about to lose it. Like, I need to go talk to the counselor. Or, hey, I need to go to the bathroom and get a drink of water. Like, I just need to get out of this situation. And I think as adults, like, we have to recognize their efforts and try to support them in that. Like, I think that is really important. I think that kind of consequence builds up and like eventually you are able to get to where you can talk to people and avoid the miscommunications. Some of the negative consequences I think could be like there are like suspensions if like things escalate to a point where there's physical violence. Like that is obviously not ideal in any setting, like whether it's here at school or at home. So like that would not be great. Some like maladaptive habits, like we don't want people to be so averse to conflict that they aren't able to express themselves. Like the removing yourself from the situation, I think, is really helpful until you can get to the point where you can talk about it. But if you don't ever get to the point where you talk about it, then things aren't going to change.
That's twofold. You need to come back and you need to address it.
Yeah, it's definitely a two-step process. Like you can't just take it away, like because the conflict is still there, and then it could reemerge later, and you're already mad, like you're holding on to residual feelings from an earlier situation. So like it's complicated, and honestly it's ever evolving. Like I'm still coming up with ways to be like, hey, I didn't handle that so well. How can I express myself better next time in hopes of preventing this from happening again?